Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here from the Knife Center, coming at you from the woods behind my house, because I'm actually back here to show you a new knife. Test it out a little bit of a review on a new Victorinox. Now of course you know they're famous for their Swiss Army knives, but they actually recently came out with a Bushcraft fixed blade. Well, here it is. Let's see what this bad boy can do. Now Victorinox actually calls this knife the lobster/fish splitter chef's knife, but I'm not sure why, because this is clearly a bushcraft knife. I mean, just take a look at this edge geometry. If you look back near the heel, this section is clearly Scandi ground, but then about a third of the way up, it starts to thin out, sort of scalloped out towards the edge, thinning it out, which is going to make it a little bit of a better slicer down there. There's actually a really good precedent for this type of geometry. I'm talking, of course, about the Mora 2000, as well as the newer Mora Kanzbul. They share a similar geometry in that we have a shorter blade with a back section Scandi ground for better woodworking and scalloped out near the front for a little better slicing capabilities, a little better as a hunting knife. So with a very similar geometry to that, this guy ought to perform very well. Now I know I'm not in a remote location here. You might be able to see some houses behind me, but I've definitely got enough land and enough brush back here to really put this thing to the test. All right, the first thing I'm gonna try and do, I've got a bit of a vine standing up here, and this is a longer blade. We've got about 13 inches of steel, stainless steel. It's a little bit of a simpler formulation. It's not a super steel, but it is nice and thick, especially here near the back. And they heat treat it a little bit on the softer side, so it should be plenty tough for this type of thing. So let's take a swing right here and see how it does. Not too bad, bit in about halfway through. There is a lot of flex in this branch, so it's gonna rob me a little bit of my power. Let's take a few more swings. You can see, got a nice big cut out of there now. Let's go all the way through next. All right, I very nearly made it through in just one more swing. Just missed a little bit here. My follow through could maybe have used a little bit more work. But part of it, I think, is the grip. We've got a smooth, stabilized, almost like a pack-a-wood type of handle here, and it could do with a little bit more swelling if you wanted a more secure grip for that heavier work. But I think if you were to, say, tie off a lanyard up here, so you could have a forward lanyard, that would go a long way to making it feel more secure while you're swinging it nice and heavily. We do, however, have a full tang, which is going to be nice for the strength. It goes technically not a full tang because it doesn't go all the way out, and you do have the front covered up by the wood handle scales, but you definitely are going to have a lot of strength and a lot of durability with that nice thick piece of steel there behind the handle. All right, the next thing any type of camping, bushcraft, or survival knife is going to need to do is be able to make a good tent stake. As you can see, I've got a nice piece of wood here, chopped from a smaller branch, and it really did chop very cleanly through the edges, creating a very clean cut and a good start to this tent stake. Now we do have a very wide blade here near the back, so you're probably going to be fighting it a little bit in terms of the absolute control. The Scandi-ish edge is really biting in there. You'll be able to clear this pretty quickly. You can even do the little chest lever grip if you want. Again, a little cumbersome there. Might have been a little better for detail work if they'd kept that a little not so wide. As you can see, I've got the bark stripped pretty nicely. Now let's go ahead and get a point in on the end and a notch at the other side for your line. Now, this could maybe be a little bit sharper. This is the factory edge on here. I didn't touch it up at all. Still doing a pretty decent job, but I think it could do better if we sharpened it. As you can see, no problems at all doing the point. The notch as well was very easily done. But I have to say something. I don't think this blade is any good at carving wood. It's just way too thick or way too wide here back near the heel. All right, so if it's not a very good wood carver, what can it do? We already saw it chop the vine, and it did okay there, but I'm gonna bring it over to my a wood pile I've got back here, try to go through some harder woods, and maybe we'll even be able to baton something with it. So I already chopped through this particular log once. So far, no real degradation or no real damage I can see to the edge. Probably is degrading a little bit again. It's not gonna hold an edge like a crazy tough or a crazy high particle steel out there. But the edge of the whole knife, including this Scandi ground back section, sort of has a hint of a micro bevel on it. You see that a lot with some custom makers of Scandi ground knives. They'll hit it with a hard buff to kind of just a hint of a micro bevel there. That's going to make it a little tougher, a little stronger than just a pure Scandi grind. So far holding up great. Let me go through this another time. So as you can see, while I was doing a lot of that chopping, of course, not a big problem actually for this knife. You can see I was using the back part of the blade, not necessarily out near the tip. Two reasons for that. One, it tells you to. The back half there is for chopping. It says it right on the blade. Front half is for cutting. But it makes sense, especially here, because you have more weight here near the back. That same thing that makes it not so great for carving, gives you a little bit more weight there for the actual chopping. And that's actually a valid thing you'll see a lot of the blade sports competitors when they're running through the chopping sections of their competition courses will actually be using the half of the blade closest to them. They seem to get more power that way, which is kind of interesting, maybe a little bit counterintuitive, but it's all down to your blade and your technique. All right, now let's do something a little silly. Let's see if we can't split this piece of wood. All right, we broke one baton, let's find another one. I'm actually getting a fair bit of small control, using kind of a little bit of that weight there at the heel to come in and very finely knock out some pieces while I make this little handhold. So this baton might not be too great either, but we'll keep going for a little bit. I have found that if you try to start your batoning back here in the back section, geometry is a little too thick. It's where that thinner geometry out front will come into play. Oh yeah, this wood is ready to split. All right, everyone, if you haven't figured it out by now, obviously we're having a little bit of fun out here and having a little bit of fun with this knife, which clearly makes a very poor bushcraft knife. That's not unexpected. That said, it did hold up pretty well, actually. No real edge damage back here. I did manage to deflect the tip a little bit when I was kind of jamming it in some wood and taking it out. It does get a little bit thin up there. Poor bushcraft knife, but it would make a great knife for breaking down crustaceans, bigger fish. It is the lobster fish cleaver after all. It's just a cool knife. I've had my eye on one of these ever since I started at the KnifeCenter. When the opportunity came up to test one, I couldn't say no. And it gives me something productive to do while I'm working from home here during this whole coronavirus situation. Orders still are going out though, so if you want to get your hands on one of these cool knives, or one of those Moras from earlier, the 2000 in the Cans Bowl, they're very cool knives, very capable and very economical. We'll make sure to leave links down there in the description because orders still are going out as of this point in time. We love you guys. Thanks for sticking around. Stay safe, stay sane, and stay sanitary. See you next time.